Cool. Okay. So you should all now be looking at Code Wars, and it's the Zoom. Oh, actually, if I click on this button, I should be able to still see everyone. Yeah, there we are. I might still see everyone's faces. Okay, so you should be able to see the get middle character kata. We're gonna go through this, and the first thing, even before I start to do any programming, is just to like explain some of this interface that you're looking at, and what we're going to do and how we're going to use it. I haven't been on Code Wars, as I said, for like a number of years, so. And I'm sorry I don't have as many points as some may think. I think they changed the scoring system as well a number of years ago, so it's now much less impressive. Anyway, so the main I guess three things that we're going to focus on is the instructions on the left, or this little box here on the left, and this output box, and what happens. Then we have this box here, which is like where we're going to type in all our code, and how we're going to use this. And then this thing down here called sample test, which is going to be super useful and important for us. And we're going to sort of explore how this works. Remember, at any point, write down your questions so I can sort of read them and have a look as I go. I hopefully will be able to read them. Should just come up at some point, I think. Yeah, if I keep that box open, that'll be good. All right, I'm gonna put all your faces away for the moment and just have the chat window up as I do this, so I can see you all. So the three different parts are this box on the left, where we're going to do some programming, and these sample tests. And the way that Code Wars works is we're going to use this test button down here just to constantly essentially check what we're doing. And if I run this without having done anything, on the left-hand side, this changes and it's gone down to this output box. And this shows us the results of trying to run some tests. And the tests on this box here are trying to give me information about what's happening. We don't need to know too much about this, apart from the fact this thing over here. So right here is basically saying, I'm going to try and run this method, get middle, with an argument, and I expect whatever happens when I do this to equal this thing here. And so it does 5 of these different examples. If I do this, it should give me this. This is the output. And there are 5 different scenarios. So the instructions, if we take a second to read them, are going to give us a set of guidelines about what we should be doing. It's going to give us some inputs and what it should return, which is going to be the outputs. And these tests are essentially just codifying that say, okay, if I run this method with this example, I'm going to get this output. And so this is a codified set of behavior or things that should happen. And so when I run it, clearly I haven't done anything yet, so they're all going to fail. So then it just outputs on the left-hand side the failures. It says expected to get ES is the first one, which is over here, but got nothing because I haven't done anything. And then all the expectations on the left-hand side, you can see are all on all of these over here. So the tests are going to help us give information about like our progression, and the result are going to happen in this box. The instructions on this kata itself is about being given a word, and our job is to return the middle character of the word. And it says if the word's length is odd, we're going to return the middle character. If the word's length is even, return the middle 2 characters. Some of you may have already done this, but I'm going to try and take it super slowly. And then as I do, read any thoughts or questions that you have, and definitely use the Zoom chat to give me your thoughts as you do. Because the only thing I'm seeing from everyone who's participating is just the Zoom group chat at the moment. So any thoughts, just throw them there, or just turn on your microphone and shout them out. So one of the things in my experience over many years of watching beginners learn how to program is their tendency to jump ahead. And one of the biggest differences or signs I see between an experienced developer or experienced engineer and someone who's just beginning is the ability to break problems down into a series of small steps and move very rapidly through the small steps. Whereas beginners don't see small steps, they just see big steps, which might be counterintuitive, and they get overwhelmed in that next step. Whereas, as I said, experienced engineers see that big step actually as a series of 10 smaller steps, and they go through the steps pretty quickly. So it looks like they're doing big steps, but they're actually doing lots and lots and lots of really small steps. And so if there's anything you're going to learn at Makers, it's that ability to break problems down into a series of small steps. And it's kind of fun. It's like a puzzle. You get to break down puzzles into the sort of small pieces. So what we're going to do here is we're going to try and take it. We're going to read the English, the instructions, and we're going to try and think about what are the things that we need to do. And I'm going to try and write them out. My first step is not going to do any programming. It's just to read the instructions and try and make sense of what I need to do. So if I try and translate the instructions, I'm actually going to just like write the comments in the middle of this method as I go. I think before I start, I'm just going to pause here for any questions or any thoughts. Am I going too quickly? Am I going too slowly? How's everyone finding it so far? Thumbs up. There was one thumbs up. I've now got everyone's faces back up. All good. Thank you. Thanks, Farzan, for using the chat. So far, so good. Cool. I'm going to keep moving. Definitely use the chat rather than the faces because I've hidden the cameras. All right. Cool. So I'm going to read through the instructions. We're going to be given a word, and the job is to return the middle character of the word. But it says if it's odd, just the middle. If it's even, the middle 2 characters. So I'm going to write this out in English. There's a shortcut for you writing comments, which is on a Mac. You can use Command and /, and you can just toggle lines of code, either single or double lines of code, or however many lines of code that you want, and just quickly make comments or uncomment lines of code. The advantage of this is you can any commented lines don't get evaluated as code, or you can write English as well. So it's just a for your eyes only kind of thing. It gets missed by the interpreter. So the first step is I'm gonna kind of almost start at the end. I always like work backwards, and I think that's a really good thing to always try and think about. Is like what's the point of what I'm trying to do? And it says here that I need to return either 2 characters or return the middle character. So there's an if something. So I'm going to say if length is odd. I'm going to try and work backwards. Return middle character. Otherwise, I'm going to return the middle 2 characters. So this is a beginning, but not quite enough at the moment because I can't really do much. There are many more steps involved here. So if I start with the length here, if the length of what is odd, I need to think about my job is to be given a word, and that word, as I can see in the test, are just like strings. Anything in quotations we call a string. So I need to find the word's length. So maybe the first thing I need to do is say find length of the word, and the word is this argument is going to come in, and this is a placeholder. And the way I can refer to what is being passed in here is by using the name of this placeholder, which is s. So in the example down here, it says I'm going to run this method, but with a string. So I want to find out how many characters this is. So I want to find the length of the word. And then once I found the length of it, I need to determine whether it's odd or even. So actually my next step after that is, before I even think about what I do with it, it's odd, it's like, is it odd or is it even? Determine whether the length of the word is odd or even. So then I can go. So these are like, this is almost like the first a few steps of like setup. Find the length of the word, and that's going to be an S. Then I determine the length of the word is going to be odd or even, and then I do something based on that. Then I say, okay, so if that length is odd, return the middle character. But I need to figure out, wait, how do I even find the middle character, or find middle two characters? So in order to return it, I need to find what the middle character is. So it might feel straightforward, but I'm just going to say find the middle character, and then I'm going to return it in the same way that I want to find the middle two characters. So the process I've just gone through right now is basically trying to take the instructions I've been given and try and translate them into an order, into things that need to happen step by step. And trying to just be super simple about it, not worry about the code, and just worry about like how do I think about it. And I started essentially from the end first, and then try to work backwards to see like what are the steps that are going to happen, and trying to do it as small steps as possible. So, some of the small steps you won't see straight away, and that's okay. That's what you'll do by practice and by listening to other people and Googling. But always think like, if something's tough, like how do I break it down into simpler steps? So we're gonna have a think about finding this middle character. But before we turn to writing code, I want to think about, okay, how do we even figure out what the middle character is of a word? And let's focus on this, like the odd condition first. I think it's slightly simpler. So let's have a few examples. And I'm going to look at the test cases for some examples. Actually, this is an odd letter, an odd word, sorry. So I'm going to just have a look at some examples here. What else is? This is odd because it's just one letter. And maybe let's create some other examples for us. Let's say cat, that's odd. That's 1, that's 3. Let's have one that's 5. What's a 5-letter word? Level. It's also palindromic. So these are examples. I'm going to try and think about like, okay, how do I find the middle letter? So we know by this example, when it's only one letter, we just give back itself. So this is, I'm going to say this is a length of 1. This is a length of 3. This is a length of 5. And this is a length of 7. And the middle character that we can see ourselves, and we're going to try and think about what's the rule here. This we get back A, that we know that's correct. This one's going to be a lowercase a. This one clearly is going to be a V. And this one's going to be a T. So far, this is like what I need to try and figure out. So this is the length. It's called by L. This is the word, and this is the middle character. Okay, so how do we think about retrieving this information? Well, strings in Ruby are ordered. So what that means is every character has a position in the word, and the position always starts from position 0. And we use the word position interchangeably with the word index. So if I try and think about what the position going to stick with a position because I think position is easier to use. What position in the word is the letter? So you might be able to tell that this is at position 0 because there's only one letter, which is at the beginning of the word. For the next example, maybe this is a good time to get people to use the chat. What's the position of A in the word cat? Nice, cool. Then you might imagine, with this example, what's the position? Cool. And we can see clearly there's a pattern here. Okay, so the next step is to figure out, okay, so how do we create a rule that gives us this position from the word? Is there a way that we can have a look at this and what the similarity is? There are a couple of things that we can do to have a think about it, but one way to think about it is that it's almost half. It's just under half. So if you divide these by 2, you get like that answer but -1. So maybe there's a rule that we can say here, which is if we divide the length of the word by 2 and then just round down somehow, we'll get there. So say for example 7. If we divide that by 2, we get 3.5. Round down as 3. So that could give us a way to get like the position of the middle character. So I'm going to demonstrate this using an interactive Ruby environment, so you can sort of see what I'm doing here. But it means I'm going to share another part of my screen. What I'm going to do is share the screen and hopefully show you a tool that you can use if you haven't yet used it to sort of play around and get like interactive using Ruby. So let me share it. So you all should be seeing like a nice bright screen that we're gonna have a look at. And I've been talking about like getting positions of characters in a string, and we can have a look at like what this means in practice by using a Ruby environment. And every Mac comes with this by standard out of the box. So you can open up your Mac, if you have it. On Windows, might be a little bit more problematic, but let's cross that bridge when we come to it. If you have a Mac, you can just type in these 3 letters, IRB, and it launches wherever you are in your terminal. It launches into a Ruby environment. If you have trouble accessing your terminal, an easy way to do it is just by going Command spacebar to bring up the Spotlight search, just typing in terminal, and that will bring up a terminal for you to do the same thing. So I'm going to type in IRB and launch into this environment where you can sort of like play around, just to sort of demonstrate what I'm talking about. So let's use this example that we have. Let's use the word testing. So here's a string that I'm saving into a local variable. The local variable is named string, and I'm storing it because you can see the equal sign is an assignment operator. So I'm just assigning the value of testing to this variable. I hit enter, and it gives me the return value of testing. And I want to sort of look at the sort of positions of letters. So if I use the variable to reference the value, which is testing, I can see that inside this variable it has testing, which is what I want. And I want to know what the first character is. So we can use the square bracket notation to have a look at different positions, different characters at different positions, and I just put inside these square brackets the position that I want. So you might imagine, in the way that I was having a look at the orders, if I want to get the middle character, I need position 0, 1, 2, 3. So it always starts at 0, then goes 1, 2, then 3. Cool, that gets me T. So we can have a play around with getting different characters. That's the first T. That's going to be the next letter. And we can just like have a look at just accessing different characters by position. Now, some of you who are enterprising might be like, okay, well, what happens if we put in like this huge number instead? Clearly, that there is no character that exists, so it just returns nil. Some of you might be even more enterprising and be like, okay, what happens if we put in negative numbers? So a quick tip is that in positions in Ruby work left to right from 0, but right to left from -1. So we go -1, starting with the G at the end, and we go -2, we'll get the N, and we go backwards. So we give a really big negative number, we get nil, because it goes left, and there are no more characters. Anyway, so that's a quick way to sort of like have a look at accessing different characters at certain positions, and it always starts at 0 on the left and -1 on the right. So if we think about what we need to do, we're trying to find the middle character, and we're trying to find a way to get from the length of the word the middle character. And so we now have a way to access the specific character at positions, and we now have a way to find the position, because we just take the length of it and divide by 2 and round down. So if I take the length of the word, which in Ruby there's a lovely method for it called length. This gives me the length of the value inside of this. Gives me 7. If I divide that by 2, what do I get? What's the answer, do you think? Just share it in your Zoom group chat. What's the answer? There are a couple different answers, huh? So some people are ahead of the game here. You either tried it out or you know. Mathematically, the only one who's correct so far is India. Is 3.5. That's exactly what happens when you divide 7 by 2, but that's not what happens here, as you might expect. So what happens here is actually integer division, not decimal division. So it does 7 divided by 2 and then finds the nearest integer, or the nearest whole integer, which is 3. So if we wanted to actually get the decimal answer, we'd have to divide it by a decimal, and we actually get the right answer. So Ruby by default does integer division when it divides integers, which is actually pretty neat for us, because it means we get straight to what we need. So this is the position of the middle character, and this is the length. So we're actually pretty much done for this condition. If we go back to our example, let's just have a look at that. If I take the string length, divide it by 2, I get 3, which is awesome, because as I demonstrated here, if I get the middle character, I get the middle T. So I actually could just replace this 3 with what I just did, which is this whole expression. So remember, this will evaluate first. String length actually evaluates first. String evaluates first, and then string length. And then we divide it by 2, and then we access whatever the result of this is from the string. So it still gets us that middle T. Let's try it out with a different example. So we had, let's reassign string to be cat. And let's do exactly the same thing here, where we do string and then just get out whatever is the length of it divided by 2. So if you think in your head for a second, string.length, string is now just a 3-letter word, so that's going to be 3 divided by 2. But Ruby does integer division, so that'll be 1. What's at position 1? Well, we start from position 0, and it's A. Thanks, Farzan. So that we should get A. And what I'm always trying to push you towards is trying to really use your sort of like brain to visualize what the return value is, because then we go through this nice feedback loop of making a hypothesis, testing it, executing it, and then seeing what the difference is, and then keep going in this lovely cycle. And experienced developers or engineers do this cycle rapidly, almost constantly. So as you read code, as you write it, always try and think about, okay, what should this do? What am I trying to do? Has it happened? Why hasn't it happened as I expected? Okay, might be with this reason, test it out, and keep going through that. and interrogate it using the tools at your disposal, using the interactive Ruby environment or Code Wars. Cool, nice. So files dimensional is going to be A. It is A. So we've actually now solved the first half of this condition, and the rest of it should be simple. That's simpler now. So I'm gonna share back to the Code Wars kata and fill in this solution. So we should be back to here, and I'm going to find the little character. Okay, so find the length of the word S. We're now in a place where we have a picture in our heads of using the English of these instructions to think about what we need to do. So I'm going to write it out here. Find the length of the word S. Ruby has a nice method called length. And I'm just going to be very descriptive and not worry about getting it all nice and neat. I'm just going to try to describe these things as they do it. And we'll go through at the end and tidy up if we need to. We're going to call this string length. And that's that part done. And then we're going to determine whether it's odd or even. If the length is odd, now that was probably a bit cheeky of me because I know that exists in Ruby. I probably should have done it in a more straightforward way. Ruby's lovely like this. It gives you nice, useful pre-made methods that you can call. If there was a different way to do this, we could use a little bit more of a mathematical way and try it and divide it by 2 and see if there's a remainder, because all even numbers are divisible by 2, all odd numbers aren't divisible by 2, there's a remainder. So a way to do it mathematically would be to check whether we divide it by 2 using this, I think it's expression. I'm not quite sure. Something like this. I'm going to go back to using the odd expression, but this essentially says, is the remainder when you divide it by 2 not equal to 0? But Ruby has a lovely method called odd. And definitely, whenever you think of a method or something you want to do, just give it a quick Google, and we should be able to have a look. So if I did it, it'd be like Ruby, find out if a number is odd. That's like what I would Google. And I would have a look at some of the examples here. See here, there's like an odd question mark. The Ruby docs are going to be useful a source to get information from. So I'll have a quick look and be like, interesting, there is a method, returns true if it's an odd number. Cool, that's what I want. Maybe I'd then go back to the interactive Ruby environment and try it out a couple of times and be like, how does it work? So if it's odd, then I'm going to find the middle character. So as we played around, we know that we can access from the string length divided by 2. I'm going to not do anything else apart from just finish off syntactically this if condition. So the moment all this method does is it takes in any argument, calls length on it, and then stores the result in this variable, and then says whatever is in this variable is odd. If it's odd, do this thing. And it accesses from the string a character at this position, and this position is calculated by finding the length of it and dividing it by 2. So my expectation is if I run the test now, the odd ones will pass, the even ones will fail, because in here is where I'd have all the even condition stuff. So I'm going to run the test now and have a look. There might be other bugs, but look, we have 2 passing tests. which is fun, and 3 failing tests, and the 3 failing ones are the ones that have 2 characters. So we're almost done. We're halfway with this one, before I move on, just to finish this off, just going to pause for some thoughts on any questions. Either shout them out or ask them in the group chat.
That thing that you use to test it all in outside of the website. I have a Chromebook at the moment. Do you know of like an online version of that, just off the top of your head?
Yes, go to, if you can see my screen, you should be able to. Go to REPL it. Listening. Oh, that's my iPad. Go away. And it's basically the same interactive environment that you can get. I probably should have already logged in somewhere. Maybe I can log in. Yes. Maybe I go new. Ruby. Create. Is that gonna work for me? Cool. I'm just double checking to see if this actually works. 1 + 1. Great, awesome. So what was I doing? I was doing like 1 is 1 odd. Cool.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, the answer to your question is yes. Go to rebel.it and then sign up or log in, and then you have access to your own environment, and that's entirely web-based. There's a lot of fun actually behind the scenes of how you get Ruby to work in the browser, because Ruby is not a browser-side language. There's actually a sort of transpiler that takes JavaScript and turns it into Ruby. But that's a topic for another conversation. Any other questions? It's a great question. Thanks, Tom, for sharing the link. Any other thoughts or questions? Going too slowly, going too quickly? Any specific things that you want me to focus on in the moment before I finish off the rest of it? And then I want to hand over and break people up into groups to have a go. Just pause another few seconds. I am trying to go like super like piece by piece slowly, and so in my head I'm going slowly, but I might be going too fast. So just if you need me to change or do things differently, let me know. I'm super happy.
This might be a bit weird, but would you mind posting your comments for how you came to the solution somewhere for us, just because I want to go through it, because I attempted to do this and I've got to the solution now, but originally I went down completely the wrong path. And it'd be good just for me to review from a learning perspective, if that's okay.
Cool. I'll just share what I've done so far into the Slack channel
Thank you.
on Learn Coding. V1 really cool. So I just shared a snippet of code in the Code Accelerator channel on Learn Coding Slack. That was just where I've got to so far. Any other thoughts or questions so far before I move on? Again, all questions. I love all questions. So the way, just as a tangent, the way that we go through these sessions is actually similar to some of the workshops that will happen on the course, where we have a small introduction. There's a coach that will demonstrate something either by live coding or by giving a small talk about the context behind a topic. And then we will break out and it's mostly just like doing stuff. And then we wrap up with it at the end with the Q&A. So this is the slightly longer version because most of the workshops on the course are like 2 hours or under. But there was a lot more like context behind saying hi and introducing it and going slowly. But this is the same format that we do on the course. Workshops will happen like once or twice, sometimes 3 times a week, in the morning usually, depending on the week. Cool. If you have any questions, just like throw them into the Zoom group chat. All right. I am super happy. Okay, so the last part is to think about the even characters or the even word length, and to see about how we can get 2 characters rather than just 1. So I'm actually going to just not try and think too much about it. The trap I see lots of beginner devs fall into is by trying to think too much. That might be counterintuitive, but I tend to work best when I don't try to keep too much in my head. I either write things down or I move in very small steps so I can constantly get feedback every step of the way whether something's working as expected. That's why tests are really good because they help me understand, like, is it working as expected? And then those small feedback loops is a really good sign of a good competent dev. So I encourage everyone to always think about how can you get more information about what the state of your program is, whether it's by running it in IRB, playing around, exploring, running tests, or even just writing it out. So here, I'm just going to copy this chart, but we're going to do it again for the even numbers. And we're going to start off with 2, 4, and 6 letter words. I'm not worried about this one. I'm going to take the examples that we have here. We have the word of, we have the word test, and middle. So the middle characters that we need, it says for 2-letter word, we need the same back. For a 4-letter word, we just need the middle 2. And for the 6-letter word, we need the middle 2, which is 2 Ds. So then we have 2 positions we need to worry about. And if you use the Zoom chat, let's work backwards. 6. What are the positions of the 2 Ds? Nice. So we actually don't need to change this one. We just do 2 and 3. And remember, it's 0, then 1, then 2, then 3. So for test, the positions are nice. 0, 1, and 2. And then for of, it's 0 and 1. Nice. So this all makes it nice and straightforward, and always take the opportunity when you're going through problems just to keep things as simple as possible. Remember what I said about beginner devs trying to take off more than they can chew, bite off more than they can chew. So the next step then is to think about, as we did with the first one, how do we go from the length of the word to the position? Some of you might have already seen that we can divide exactly the length of the word and we get the position on the right. It's a straightforward integer division. And then if we have the one on the right, we can just subtract 1 from it to get the other position. So we could come up with something with like length divided by 2. But also the length divided by 2 minus 1. So if we take 6, let's do it for this example, 2 and 3. Hopefully this will be 2, and this will be 3. So if we do length divided by 2, 6 divided by 2 is 3, 3 minus 1 is 2, as good as this one. And straightforward, 6 divided by 2 gives us 3. So once we've sort of like looked at the pattern, looked at the data, we can see the pattern, and then we can try and describe a rule for it. And that part there is like can be tricky to spot straight away. Sometimes like I would do lots more scenarios so I can sort of get more information to see if there are trends, and that's entirely okay. So let's have a quick play with this in the Ruby environment, and then I'm going to be satisfied, and then add it into the else condition, and then we're going to run the tests. So I'm going to share my terminal again. And then remember, keep playing around, use Replit on the browser to play around with this as well. So I'm going to rename my string to be an even number. What I just did there to clear the screen was Command K as a shortcut, just to clear the screen and start from top. So it's an even length word test with 4 characters. And I want to try out getting the 2 characters. I'm going to try and get the E out first. We know to access, we use the square brackets, and we need a position here. And we're using the length of the string, so string.length divided by 2. Remember, think through in your heads what this would be at the moment. I want to get the E out, which is at position 1. The length is 4. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, not 1. So I need to make sure I subtract 1 from it. So I'm going to put these in brackets just to observe the order of operations. So string.length is 4, because it's a 4-letter word. We divide by 2, we get 2, because of integer division. 2 minus 1 is 1. And that position 1 in the string is E. That's my assumption. I verify it by running the code and evaluating it, and I get the right answer. So if I want to get the letter S out, it's at position 2. So I actually don't need to minus the 1. I can just run it also without the brackets. And I get S. So how do I make sure they come out together? Well, the easiest way to do it is just to put the strings together, and that process is called concatenation. The easy way is just add them together. So I can add strings using the add operation, A plus B. It just like throws them together. It actually takes the right-hand side and adds it to the left. So I'm going to do the same thing with my 2 different parts. I want the E first, so I'll do this one first, plus this one. Cool. It doesn't look very nice, but it works, and I'm satisfied with that. I'll think about trying to do a better way later. Always try and postpone decisions. I know it sounds lazy, but it's actually really good. You'll never know. You'll always know more later than you do now. So if you can postpone. It's actually a really useful thing that a lot of people forget. Never try and do too much right now. Only do the most minimal thing you need to right now. So I think I'm pretty much done with this one. I'm gonna go back to the Code Wars screen. There are a couple other fun. Before I do that, there are a couple other fun ways to access characters at different positions using the square brackets. You've seen just one way. If you're interested, this is like a little bonus. I don't need to just put one number in here. I could put a couple numbers. So I could say I want from position 0, I want the first 2 characters. That gets me T and E. Or just want the first 1 character, just because we include the first one, which makes sense just to do that. But maybe I want to start at position 1 and give 2 characters. So that might be an interesting way. So this is a position, and then this is how many from that position. What else could we do with square brackets? We do a range, so I could do something like from position to position. From position 0 to position 2 gives me those characters. So a couple extra things you could play around with doing, and if you want to explore how square brackets work, Google them. Have a fun time exploring that. But I'm going to stick with a straightforward example that I've done here. I'm going to go back to my browser. Cool. So I'm going to fill in the even condition now. And notice I've just said if it's odd, clearly there are only two possible possibilities here. It's odd or even. So I don't need to write if it's even, given that when Ruby evaluates, it will look at this first condition. And then if it's not odd, it has to be even. So I can just go straight to an else condition. So I'm going to do string length divided by 2. I put that in brackets beforehand because I want to get -1 first, and then I'm going to add it to string length divided by 2. So I'm just going to now run the tests and see how far I've got. There might be some bugs, we might get some failures, and see where we're at. Nice, cool, you pass all the tests, and also very cheekily gives me a nice smiley face. So I'm going to, first of all, just before I do anything else, copy this and add it to the Slack channel, just so you can see it. I'm going to try and edit it. I'm just putting it at the bottom. So I just added to the snippet of code, the next version. Okay. I run the tests. Everything's working fine. It looks a bit weird, but it should be okay. What was I thinking about doing? Well, the one thing I see at the moment is that this is like repeated in 3 different places. So whenever I see things repeated, I like to like draw out the abstraction. So I'm just going to bring it to the top here and say something like this. What does this represent? This represents like the middle of the middle number, the middle of the word, right? So I'm just going to give it a name called middle. And just replace it by the thing that it is. I think that looks a little bit neater. This only happens once, really, so I think I'm actually not going to worry about it. I'll leave it commented so we can see it, but I think I'm just going to use string.length. And I'm going to try and now get rid of all the comments so you can just see what's going on here. And that, for the moment, is the solution that we came to. I'm going to leave it as this. We could probably